Today we're going to be comparing my old Corvette C7 to this 2-week-old C8 Corvette, which the car looks phenomenal. Sorry I couldn't get you guys a cold start today, but had to start from inside with our key just because it's kind of hot out, black interior, you know, get the AC on. So we're all ready to go. The car defaults into my mode, so we're all ready to go for the video. So there's a few main points I want to address with the C7 versus C8. Obvious things: this is not a manual, this is not a front engine car. It strays away from all of the previous Corvette generations with its engine layout. The handling difference, I'll just say on this road you can go 15 miles an hour faster, and it's not, well, obviously with the C7 you can push it at the same speed, but you're upsetting the car and you're putting yourself at far greater risk than you are in the C8. The C8, everything's so easy, and honestly part of that is just the squircle. Yeah, I just said squircle. The steering wheel in this car is squared at the top and the bottom, and it's fantastic. It's honestly, the grip you have is just unbelievable. The power of this car, the difference between the C7 and this, is incredible as well, but that's due to short gearing, not really horsepower. This is at least 40 horsepower more than the C7, but in reality, that is not the difference. This car shifts out of first, hold on, we'll test when the car warms up, but I believe it's around 30 miles an hour. The C7 you can get to high 50s at least. Never really tried to push it all the way, but it could probably approach 60. You might even be able to do it a 0 to 60 run without shifting, which is pretty crazy. So the difference in the gearing is that. The quarter mile is actually pretty similar. This will be really high 10s, that'll be really low 11s. So as you can tell, this car really lets off at the top end. The gearing lets it down there, but the 2.9 0 to 60 that's quoted from Chevy, where the 2.7 or 2.8 people get on their onboard with this car, is pretty insane. The C7 with the manual was about 4, with the automatic was 3.9. So the difference is pretty huge there. Yes, the old automatic was basically a slush box. It was just a torque converter auto. I never got to drive a car with an automatic, so I can't say, but this DCT is phenomenal. It's not as good as, let's say, the McLaren transmission, but the cost difference, you wouldn't expect it to be. You wouldn't expect it to be anywhere near as good. And it is not that far behind. Okay, the downshifts are quite slow in manual mode. I'm not gonna lie. The upshifts though are really fast. And all of them are very smooth, and all of them are great. Sound-wise, the startup on this car is twice as loud as the C7. And that's generous to the C7. It's more than twice as loud, honestly. Engine-wise, it's definitely got a much better tone, it's more aggressive. But there's a lot more sound deadening, there's a lot less road noise in this car. This car just feels a lot more solid in general. The ride of this car is much better, although in fairness it has all-season tires. The road noise is minimal in this car. It's less than any car I think I've ever been in. The ride is just about as good as any car I've ever been in. Like, that was a pretty big pothole. It would have been a little hard to avoid with another car on the other side of the road. But the way this car drives is just so different to the C7. The front just darts into a corner. The C7 never did that. It would always roll a little bit. The power difference is obvious, the full second 0 to 60. But just stuff you notice while driving, I mean, the screens are much faster. They obviously look a lot better. I'll show you that a little more later. The Android Auto, you don't need a USB to plug in with this car. You did with the C7. It's all wireless on this car. This car doesn't have it, but you could have the wireless charger right behind you, and I'll show you that in a second. The interior difference between this and a C7 is not just noticeable, but it's absolutely gigantic. The car hasn't actually fully warmed up yet, so we're going to do a little loop. It's at about 160 degrees. The car runs normally about 170, 180 at least. It's a little cooler out right now, so we're going to just do one little quick circle, and on the way back we'll give it a little gas, and you can see just how fast this car is. But it's so much better of a daily, and it's not even the transmission difference. It's not the stick automatic, which I thought would be the big difference. It's just the ride difference, and just the overall feel of everything. The quality, the way you close the doors on this car, little things like that, it just feels so much better. Just infinitely better. The truth about the debate here is, I thought when I got this car I'd be really let down with not having a stick anymore. I don't feel that way at all. Now I'm going to try to get you guys a little engine noise. I'm going to lower the windows, and I'm going to put it in Z mode, because it has warmed up now. Not going to really rev it, but I'm going to put the windows down, try to get you a little engine noise. You'll see just how much sound insulation there is. Okay, there's second, there's first. I'm at 4,000 at 20 miles an hour. Yeah, the car goes to about 30 in first. That's a huge difference. But you don't get that sound. That was less than 3,000 RPM. You never got that on the C7. This car is fully broken in, FYI. We did a 500-mile road trip home from North Carolina. That finished the break-in right there. There's still, that technically is another 1,000 miles on the break-in, but that's basically just checking the oil and not going on a racetrack. This car won't see a racetrack for at least a pretty long period of time. It shifts pretty aggressively in Z mode. Obviously, I was doing it manually before, but now it's back in automatic. The G-force gauge is pretty funny to see, I'm not gonna lie. The car is just everyone says this car feels so much less sporty than the C7, and that's one thing I was really worried about, because the car is quite a bit heavier, but in the turns it feels so much lighter. It's not even comparable. Now that the car is fully warm, we can let it rip a little bit, but as long as there's no one around, obviously. The windows are down, so you might get a little wind noise. I apologize about that, but the engine noise should make up for it. Right there is 2800, and I hope you can tell it's quite a bit louder than the C7. With the sound insulation, it's really not until you start revving it. I don't know how much of that is fake noise, because this is not the performance exhaust. This car is basically a base 1LC, as I talked about in the previous video. The car is just phenomenal. I'm speechless a lot of the time. The C7, what drawbacks I see from this, because I've talked a lot about the improvements on a daily basis and speed-wise. You can see in Z mode, you can see it shifts pretty aggressively. The downsides, the C7 is a lot lighter, but I wouldn't think it is. I don't really see it as lighter, to be honest. This car just feels so much lighter. Okay, drawbacks. The C7... I should have thought about this a little more, obviously, I think, but I just really can't think of any drawbacks in particular. Drop the car into manual, so even if we can't hit the gas too much, you can just hear it. So there's about 3,500. There's a lot of, there's less, mechanically raw noises in this car than the C7. You hear, a lot of humming and stuff as you're running along the road. It's not as raw. Okay, so we're gonna hit it here. You guys ready? So there's the noise. The C7 never made a noise like that, and it never, ever felt that fast. Even though doing that pull, you would have been sliding across the road, it would never feel as fast as this does right there. I'm going to take it out of Z mode once we finish these corners, but I'm going to leave it here just for the improved steering feel, because it really is quite a big difference. One thing this does the same as the C7, it's got smart seatbelts, so when you hit the gas like that, it really pins you back. But this is flat handling at around 40 around that turn. At 35, the C7 would feel a little loose. I'm not going to go too fast right now because it's not nighttime or anything. There's people walking in. But this car just feels like it feels like a Swiss Army knife compared to a machete. That's how I'll describe this to the C7. I'm still thinking of drawbacks. I just can't think of any. Other than, the loss of engagement from the stick, but that's not really fair to this car, is it? Because to be honest, this car is so sharp and so everything. I don't know, would I want to stick in this car? I probably would. I'd probably want to stick in this car. So you know what? I will give it a drawback. That's all I can give the C7. I'm serious. That's all I can give it. Some people prefer the front engine. I don't get that personally. Okay, so while we're on the inside of the car, I'm going to say one little thing that I actually noticed as a huge improvement over this car, over the C7. The C7 had this child lock feature, which you couldn't disable. I looked into it. When the passenger can't unlock their door when you stopped, which is really annoying. You'd have to press this button for them, or if they knew it, they could do it on their own. The buttons are a lot nicer to switch gear in this than the C7, but I mean, you get the idea. That is a huge upgrade. I know it sounds like a stupid little thing, but on a day-to-day basis, it's a pretty big deal to me. 767 miles, guys. We're really using it. The screens look so cool. I love the screens. I mean, this is one of the biggest additions. My phone's in the car. You can just press Android Auto, and then it works. I mean, it's just, there's not a lot of things that don't work, and everything's just lightning fast, as you can see. I mean, I just don't see anything slow down. The C7 would always lag a little bit. You can actually hear the fuel pump coming on there. That I thought's a little strange. It's one thing that bugs me a little bit, but I'm sure they'll get any tweaks that they have out. It's really cool to look back and just be able to see the motor. The only car you think of that is the 2nd Gen 4 GT. Technically 1st Gen 4 GT because the GT40 was a different name, but yeah, the build quality of this car, you just, the way the door closes, it just, everything's more solid than the C7, I'm just being honest. The key is the newer generation Chevy key, obviously. I mean, everything's new. It's just that much better. Obviously, you know what, one drawback I'll say, this turn indicator is not as nice as the C7. It feels a little better, but the functionality of it's a little more annoying. And that's like the littlest thing, and I really just can't think of a single thing negative on this car compared to the C7 that's really legitimate. So thank you guys for watching, and